So this is the key to understanding the way of Jesus. You can do sacrifice of somebody else, or you can do self-sacrifice. Self-giving, that's what Jesus does on the cross. Or you can do, well, I'm going to sacrifice my kids, or I'm going to sacrifice them with these dangerous drugs, or I'm going to sacrifice and put the blame on these people, or we're going to send those people off to war, sacrificing somebody else for the gods of the principalities of this world. Or are we going to self-sacrifice and say, I'm giving up on that false god, I'm going to follow Jesus? So let's go to what Habakkuk was saying. So he's quoting Habakkuk chapter 2, who says, woe to him who builds his house by unjust gain. Does that sound like what we're doing still today? Setting his nest on high to escape the clutches of ruin. You have plotted the ruin of many peoples. People are displaced all over the world because we have idolatrously handed over power to human beings rather than following the way of peace that Christ inaugurated 2,000 years ago. Vietnam, wars all over the place. Look what happened to Dresden, even World War II. That's supposed to be the good war. 55,000 civilians murdered in Dresden. They were just innocent civilians, just had the wrong ethnicity. That's sacrificial violence. That's not Christ. And that's what our government was doing. So we have been being used with this false sense of patriotism, and I have issues even with the Pledge of Allegiance, because the Pledge of Allegiance was written by a socialist, Francis Bellamy. We can look it up. And I know people's intentions are good, so that God honors our intentions. But even that has its own corrosive effect when you swear allegiance to kings. Because when that flag flies over the latest abortion advancement in Africa, where our government says, you want our American money, you better abort your kids or trans their children, that's a flag that doesn't need to be aligned with our hearts. We don't pledge allegiance to that when it does that. And Francis Bellamy was a socialist. That's why he created that. He wanted to get us to have more of a socialist mindset when we think of patriotism. But Habakkuk chapter 2 goes on to say just what Jesus said. The stones of the wall will cry out, and the beams of the woodwork will echo it. Woe to him who builds a city with bloodshed and establishes a town by injustice. That's what Jesus was quoting there. Has not the Lord Almighty determined that the people's labor is only fuel for the fire, that the nations exhaust themselves for nothing? Now, this is the good news. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. So the knowledge of the Lord will flourish when the stones cry out.